extensive studies with a much more rapid process and much more detailed, perhaps safety monitoring of individual patients when we treat them. And I think that's the real conundrum.
And this conundrum is being pondered by the UK's medical regulator, the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, or MHRA, which is participating in the Rare Therapies Launchpad.
We've been requested to look particularly at what's called a roadmap for regulatory approval.
Dr. Mark Bailey is the MHRA's Chief Science Research and Innovation Officer. He's working at the forefront of this new way of thinking on how to gather the evidence needed to approve customised medicines.
We're developing what we call real-world evidence techniques. Here we're talking about small number of patients, often tragically with a debilitating disease where being brought into a clinic may not actually be an option. So instead we're looking at what data can be gathered in the home or wherever they are, day in, day out, how those can be correlated to what we call a clinical endpoint that says that the therapy is working. So just in the case of Millicin, we know that when therapy was applied to Mila, we saw a significant drop in some neurological symptoms immediately at home. That's the kind of real-world evidence that can be seen by carers, by family, and can be reported as accurately rather than needing a clinician.
The point of all this work is to gather evidence to show that therapy are safe platform for delivering different individualised medicine. If the regulators can do this, then doctors can easily use one technology to treat many different genetic patients. This is a much different way that can produce different flu vaccines every year.
That is aspiration. What we're doing as part of this is getting the genomic information on each patient. And within that is the information that we use to target to that specific patient. But the objective here is that that targeting information can be slotted into this wide therapy, and suddenly we've got multiple diseases being treated and getting the benefits we're talking about.
If all this work is to be successful, we need to find children with genetic mutations much earlier in life and treat them sooner so that their outcomes are better than Mila's. Because, in the case of these diseases, time really does matter.
Quite often people describe what's referred to as a rare disease diagnostic odyssey, where it can take an average of 5 years from first symptoms to finding a diagnosis.
Dr. Richard Scott is a clinical geneticist at Great Ormond Street Hospital, and he's also the Chief Executive of Genomics England, which is working with the Rare Therapies Launchpad. Genomics England is about to launch a new study which is going to sequence the genomes of 100,000 babies at birth. But genetic testing is still a very expensive process, so this brings up a further question. How do we justify putting so much time, money and effort on the development of treatments for rare diseases when there is so much need to treat more common but also deadly conditions?
Rare conditions is a funny and misleading term. The first thing to know is that there are literally thousands of them. So while individually they're rare, collectively they're relatively common. So approximately 1 in 17 people in the population has a rare condition. Now some rare conditions are relatively straightforward to diagnose. Many, the majority, are very hard, even with today's technologies.
But there's a bigger point to all this. The Genomics England newborn screening programme is only going to be testing for diseases which have currently available treatments. But the collection of genomic data will be crucial in the future as the science evolves.
As we begin to understand genetics better, and with this new wave of genetic treatments, of which drugs like Millicin are just the very first type, we will eventually, I think, begin to see our common diseases much more like we think about rare disease. In other words, we think about cardiovascular disease or heart disease or cancer or something like dementia, the big so-called common diseases. As we understand how to manipulate the genetics underlying these diseases better, the more we will probably have to think about these diseases as rare diseases. Even a disease like dementia, when you take into account the genetic architecture of a disease like dementia, you could probably break this down into many, many different types of dementias that affect subgroups of patients. So in the future, and whether that is in 5 years or 10 years or 15 years, we'll be thinking about common diseases much more like we do today. Think about rare diseases.
But all that is a future that medicine is building towards. Back in the here and now, Julia Vitarello's fight for her daughter Mila may be over, but she's determined that the work in her name carries on.
I guess in my mind, when I go to bed at night, what kind of keeps me pushing forward is that tens of millions of children will die before the age of 5 from a rare disease. That does not include Mila. Mila died at 10 years old. It's insane. I'm shocked that no one else is talking about this way. And then there was a toolbox that was kind of empty until recently. But now there are more and more tools in that toolbox, including ASOs. And the only way to draw the line between access from these children to the technologies that exist today is luck. It's purely luck. Either they are part of a disease that is large enough to be commercially viable, or they're lucky enough to have a highly motivated parent, highly motivated physician that are going to raise millions of dollars, put hundreds of people together, fill out thousands of pages for the regulator, spend years, all for one dying child. I really hope we can help Mila, this one-off case, towards a very different model where I hope that in the next few years we see a bustling ecosystem of many companies and many academics working together. But first we need a road. We don't even have a road, so no one can access these. So my hope is that we can concentrate on creating a road and at the same time still think of all the important questions, but then we can think about how this is going to be accessible. And ideally, the model that we set in the UK should be one that is replicable around the world.
The work that's being pioneered in the UK could show how we can develop, regulate, manufacture and pay for a whole new wave of customised medicines. And success will mean making sure they are more affordable and accessible than the current generation of genetic treatments. And that could be Mila's legacy.
Mila's legacy was presented by Natasha Loder. The producer was Sandra Campbell.
What's happened? Birmingham exploded.
On BBC iPlayer.
You look like somebody who could be somebody.
I want to be a poet.
A poet?
If I wrote the words, and you sung them, and this skinhead girl wrote the music.
From the creator of Peaky Blinders.
It's time a songline stepped up. Go on, do your duty.
I no longer just want this band to work, I need it to work.
If you don't get away, you just become what everybody already thinks you are.
This Town.
We'll take over the whole world.
Starts on Sunday on BBC iPlayer.
Now Radio 4, Room 101 with Paul Merton.
Supposing you had the chance to get rid of some of your worst nightmares, what would they be? My guest is here to persuade me to banish the items on his list to a place where they'll never be seen again. This is Room 101. Ladies and gentlemen, will you please welcome the unmistakable, the one and only Julian Clary! Welcome, Julian. Welcome to Room 101.
Thank you. How lovely to be here. I can't think of anywhere I'd rather be.
On a wet night. So, Julian, tell me, do you have any trouble coming up with the items on your list?
Well, you may recall I did this nonsense on the television with you.
That's right.
What year was that? You'll know.
1999, I think.
Okay.
And we thought we'd have you back.
I could have done an extended program. I could think of so many things that get on my nerves. Now, unusually probably, as I get older, I don't get annoyed by things so much. So I did struggle a bit, not that much. but it wasn't as easy as it was in 1999.
Do you think getting older brings a maturity, brings a sense of contentment or a level-headedness or an even temper?
Oh, thank you for all those many options. All of the above. Yes, I just don't really care so much about them.
Well, this is going to be a very short half hour, isn't it? Okay, let's have a listen to your first choice then.
Wild swimming.
Wild swimming?
Yes, gets on my nerves. Well, wild swimmers get on my nerves because they're so rosy-cheeked and pleased with themselves. And there's nothing wild about it. I mean, it's just swimming in dirty water as far as I can see. Who could argue with that?
Well, I mean, you mentioned the dirty water. I mean, this is an extraordinary statistic. The Environment Agency reported recently that last year raw sewage was dumped into English rivers 800 times a day.
Which isn't, of course, the wild swimmers' fault, but unless they contribute. But I did hear one of them being interviewed the other day, and
yes,
she stopped smiling and being pleased. She said, "Oh well." They said, "Do you still swim?" Because they test the water before they get in.
Yes.
And they said, "Do you still swim if it's shown to be, you know, foul water?" She said, "Oh yes, but we don't put our heads under the water." Well, it's just disgusting, isn't it? Big drops in your hair.
For me, that ruins a night out. Is it the fact that they're very pleased with themselves that angers you? It's not the actual activity itself, is it their attitude to the activity?
I think it is, because they think everyone else should do wild swimming as well. And they frequently mention their mental health and how this is good for you. I mean, you can't just go swimming in a clean bit of water. That would be good for you as well. I understand exercise is good for mental health, but wild swimming, no, just put it in. Let's move on.
Well, would you be surprised to know that Gwyneth Paltrow endorses wild swimming?
No, although I have got one of her vagina candles at home.
Oh, that's the closest you've ever come to a candle. Can he say candle?
I beg to differ. I lived a very full life.
Have you ever set light to one during a power cut?
Where were we?
Well, we were talking about sort of wild swimmers say, you know, it's good for their health and stuff. According to the British Medical Journal, the shock of cold water is beneficial.
Is it? They're all pally with each other, aren't they?
Oh, I hate it when people have friends, don't you?
Yes.
What's the matter with them?
They do it just to go and meet people. So that gets on my nerves as well.
Now, I don't think we can possibly keep wild swimming out of it.
Thank you.
So,
I'm going for a full house tonight.
Well, let's get the programme out of the way first. So, wild swimming is going into room 101. Okay, Julian, we have a sound illustration for your next choice. Have a listen to this.
Pats on the back, which is a sort of exclusive, as far as I can work out, to heterosexual men.
Yes.
It's when you greet someone, but you're going to put your arms around them, but they want to show that there's nothing sexual or sensual about it, and they tend to do it. It's generally 3 on the pats on the back, and it annoys me. You know, if you want to greet me or hug me, then do it. Then you don't have to assert where you sit on the spectrum by patting me on the back in a manly fashion. I don't think women pat each other on the back like that.
No, I've not ever seen that.
No. Do you do it as a heterosexual man?
No, not really.
I bet you do.
No, I don't. Well, on my own, no. There is a guy called Richard Wrangham from the Department of Human Evolutionary Biology at Harvard University. He says there is a general principle involved in animal alliances such as male-to-male friendships in primates. If two individuals are to express feelings of mutual solidarity, the reliability of the signal is greater if it is generally somewhat stressful.
Well, I've glazed over.
Yeah.
Don't know about you.
There's 3 more bits, but I can't even be bothered to read those out.
No.
So apparently open palms are seen as a sign of unthreatening behaviour. So when you pat someone, you're saying, I have nothing in my hands. Apparently that's what it's about.
Oh, they won't let go as
No.
well. Oh, put it in.
Can we stick to the Room 101 subjects for a moment? When Donald Trump met Emmanuel Macron, they shook hands for over 45 seconds. Neither one was prepared to let go. So the pat on the back, supposing you're in a restaurant, you see somebody choking to death. Do you rush over and pat them on the back?
No, I'd call an ambulance. No, you do the Heimlich manoeuvre.
Yeah, that's it, yes, yeah, the Heimlich manoeuvre. Well, I mean, it's yeah, pat on the back. It's neither a handshake, it's not a proper hug. It seems to be American, really. Patting on the back, definitely going into Room 101. In it goes.
Very gracious of you, because you have, I realised on the way here, you have all the power in this show, don't you?
Totally.
It's like me asking you, can I have some food or something? And you say, well, think about it, what are your reasons for wanting food?
Yeah.
And then you say yes or no.
Yeah.
So you're being very compliant so far.
Exactly, well, I mean, you know, it'll change in the edit. For your next choice, we did have a sound effect, but it turned my stomach. So tell us about your next choice.
Love Your Garden with Alan Titchmarsh.
For those of us who haven't seen this televisual feast, what is Love Your Garden with Alan Titchmarsh?
Well, hear me out. A researcher is sent out and they have to find someone who is either recently bereaved or terminally ill. And they go round to their modest home and they lure them away. Then Alan Titchmarsh and the team rush round to their garden and they rip out anything vaguely attractive. And they sprinkle a bit of coloured gravel around and install the cheapest water feature they can find. And then the poor bereaved person is returned to their home and inevitably they cry. And I find it manipulative. I mean, I do watch it obsessively.
Yeah.
And I've no objection. Alan Titchmarsh is the lovely man who's interviewed me several times, and you can't take your eyes off his hair. If you notice, he's got this funny kind of little cactus thing growing on top of his head. But it's just the whole concept of the fact that he comes out of it very well. It's like he's doing good. He's very tactile. He does hugs and pats.
Does he?
And squeeze it. They're often blind. And
what's he squeezing, please?
They have a sensual garden. Anyway, the whole thing needs to go in Room 101.
You've mentioned in the notes here that there's a symbolic bench.
Oh yes. Well, they do a bit of research and they find out things like they have lavender because it is symbolic of memory or forget-me-nots or something, or they spell out the deceased person's name in stones, and they have a little contemplative corner with a bench so you can sit there, and they tell them this is where you can sit and think about your dead husband.
Yes. Whose name we've printed out in stones.
Yes.
And unfortunately died of a kidney stone, so you'll think of that every time you...
Oh, there's sometimes a tiny little cheap pine wood shed, which they make out to be something it's not, where they can sit and think about the 6 months they've got left.
I mean, it's a winner as a format, isn't it?
There are a lot of these makeover programs that do things along those lines, but that is the worst offender.
Yes, I mean, you say that, I mean, you're quite right. There always seems to be some jeopardy or sub-story for a deserving person.
It's essential. If you don't qualify for that, you don't get on.
Yes. They should make a garden for somebody who doesn't deserve it, for once, like Nigel Farage or something, you know?
Or if you're going to do it, then make it really lovely. But the thing is, it's quite cheaply done.
Yes.
And it's all clever camera angles to make it look not very nice. And my husband and I sit there retching during the final reveal.
Do you think that's the effect they wanted to have on the viewers at home? Pass the bucket, it's the last commercial break. I was rather hoping when I first heard about it, I was rather hoping the choice would be Alan Titchmarsh himself, but it's not him.
No, you're not keen on him?
No, not really. He once was nominated. Bad sex in his novel, Mr. McGregor.
Yes.
Mr. McGregor is a randy TV gardener.
Oh, I've got a semi already.
Yeah. Is it detached? Right, here we are then. Okay, Mr. McGregor, the randy TV gardener, right? This is published by Simon & Schuster. Beads of sweat began to appear on Guy's forehead as he became more entangled in the lissom limbs of this human boa constrictor. For fully 15 minutes, their mutual passion heightened with groans, sighs, and liquid noises. Now that's a water feature, isn't it? Well, we've definitely got to get rid of this programme, although you are very amused about it, but I think Love Your Garden with Alan Titchmarsh must go into room 101. We have no sound effect for your next choice, Julian, so could you tell us what it is?
It's hotel toiletries.
Mm.
Those mean little tiny slivers of soap that are wrapped up and glued up that you can't get at when you need to wash your hands. And everything wrapped up, a little tray with a nail file and things. They don't do it for me. They get on my nerves, and I always take my own toiletries. Also, some places you get a big thing of shower gel in the shower,
yes,
which you pump. You know,
yes.
But it's attached to the wall, so
yes,
you can't take the whole thing.
Yes.
And you don't know who's been pumping it before you, do you?
Now, it's one hotel chain produced a top 10 list of things stolen from hotel rooms, right? That included coat hangers, artwork from the walls, cutlery from room service. Some people order room service several times so they can get a full set of cutlery. This is my favourite one, the best one, batteries from the TV remote.
Really?
So, I mean, something that wouldn't be discovered until the next person comes into the room and tries to sort of work the TV and realises it's not working.
Yes, I've got to think about those as well.
Have you?
You don't know who's been fingering that, do you?
Yes. No. Not very hygienic.
No.
The Travelodge chain produced a list of things left behind in their hotel rooms, which included a title deed to some land in the Scottish Highlands, the script for a feature film. We didn't say which one it was. If it was a Travelodge, probably a room without a view. And the other thing, some Jersey potatoes. Can you think of what the worst hotel you've ever been in was?
Well, my worst hotel experience was in Scotland. It was freezing cold. I was on tour. I phoned down to say I was absolutely frozen. You know, it was like -10 or something. And they said, "Oh."
Somebody walked on, and somebody come on.
The heating doesn't go on until 6 o'clock. I said, well, I'm going to leave at 5:30 because I've got to go and do my sound check. Oh, I can't do anything about that. So I had to get under the duvet for my time. And when I got back to the hotel at midnight, it was freezing cold again because the heating had gone off.
Yes.
At 11 o'clock. So that was, I felt very bitter about that.
Yes, that's quite annoying, isn't it, when that happens? Now, so you're talking about the small toiletries that you see in hotel rooms. Is there anything else that annoys you? Chocolates on the pillow, for example, or folding back the toilet paper into an arrow shape? Does any of that annoy you?
No, I'm amused by all that. And there are places where the towel is folded into a remarkable impression of a swan.
Yes.
I like that, that's funny.
Yes.
And there's a hotel in the Maldives where I stayed where every night you got a different treat on the pillow in a little glass jar. So it'd be very exciting when you got back after your dreary Maldivian dinner to see what you'd get.
I'm not sure about this one, Julian.
Well, I would say I don't want to shoot myself in the foot, but my tour manager volunteers at a hostel. I don't use these toiletries, but I collect them all up and I give them to her, and they're very handy for people that are, you know, staying overnight and want to shower or whatever.
Right, okay.
So don't put it in, it would be a shame.
Okay, Julian, so I'm afraid I can't put hotel toiletries into room 101. I'm very sorry. Okay, your next choice, again, very difficult to get a sound for this, so would you tell us what it is?
It's roundabout flower beds. You know when the local council plant miserable flowers in a roundabout thinking, well, that'll cheer them up in Swindon or whatever. And it's always awful flowers like cyclamen I don't like. It's deeply depressing.
Does it seem to be the wrong place for flowers to be on a roundabout?
Yes, what they should do with roundabouts, there's a lot of value in, you know, letting things go wild now.
Mm-hmm.
Wildflowers, the insects would enjoy it much more than we were driving past. So I rest my case.
Wild roundabouts, though, isn't that a bit like wild swimming?
No, there are no awful people involved.
So you see them spell out sometimes the names of the council and stuff like that. You think it's all a bit sort of manicured, perhaps?
Oh, well, you put it that way, it's all right. Welcome to Eastbourne.
There was a story in the Daily Mirror a few years ago. There was a roundabout controversy, floral roundabout controversy. Motorists in Weston-super-Mare were horrified when gardeners removed some bedding plants, leaving a swastika in blue perennials.
Was that the gardener having a laugh?
What else could they do with roundabouts then? A putting green?
Children's playground? Or, you know, bird houses and things? I don't know.
In Truro in Devon, the county celebrated its roundabouts being shortlisted in the Britain in Bloom competition by spelling the words Britain in Bloom finalists in lettuces. That's a bloke on the phone who said, I want it in big letters.
Yeah, it's very provincial. You see...
I don't know if we're going to put this into room 101.
Why not?
All right, then I will. Into room 101 we go! So, Julian, it comes to your final choice, which is...
It's chatty taxi drivers.
Chatty taxi drivers.
Yeah, the trouble is, you know, if you're in the mood for a chat, it's fine. But
Yeah.
sometimes you're not, and you're trapped, aren't you? And
Yeah.
they're nearly always very chatty and verbose. And they don't know what's going on in your life. You know, you might be bereaved, you might be depressed, you might just want a bit of quiet. And thought, thank goodness. And then they start, don't they? Oh, I know.
Let's hear your impression of a taxi driver and see if we can guess which country they're from. Well, oh, hello.
Do you know? No, I've got to build up to it. There's one taxi driver in London who is psychic as well.
Yes.
Who keeps...
So he just turns up at your front door, does he?
But I've had him over the years.
Yes.
Several times, and he says things like, "Does a name Margaret mean anything to you?" Oh, your mother's shy. And you say no, and he would give me, apparently, allegedly, psychic messages from my deceased dog, Fanny the Wonder Dog.
Really?
They're really boring messages like, Fanny says she's doing very well.
Well, we've got a sort of... You mentioned Fanny the Wonder Dog there, actually, and we have a clip from you. We mentioned before doing Room 101 on the television many years ago. And here you are talking about Fanny the Wonder Dog getting old on Room 101.
She can walk into a room and just find the nearest wall. And she leans against the wall, and then you can see the back legs go. And so then she has to sit down and pretend she wanted to sit down all along.
So she's now, because in human years she's 18, but in dog years I think that makes her something like 133 or something.
I know,
like
she is the living dead.
That was interesting hearing that, actually. 'Cause
Yes.
One of the things I put in Room 101 back then was the lifespan of dogs, because it seemed to me that you find the perfect dog for you, and you just get used to them as your constant companion. Then they get old and then they die. But I've sort of changed my opinion about that a bit, because I've had, 3 or 4 dogs now, and you know, they grow old and die, but it seems to prepare you, because I've got this thing that dogs come to you at the right time, by some sort of higher force, you know, to guide you through each period of your life. It's a whim, really, but that's what I like to think. So maybe it was that by coping with a dog's demise that teaches you how to cope with other deaths and things.
I mean, it's interesting. So when you say you feel like the dog has arrived at the right time for you, where have you chosen your dog? Do you go to a dog's home, or does somebody say, I've got a puppy, or how do they arrive in your life? Is there a consistent pattern?
Yes. Funny the Wonder Dog was from South London Dog Rescue. Valerie, I had this, it's when you get the urge, you see, I had the urge to get a dog, and funnily enough, it was the taxi driver who heard me talking on the phone. He said, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I know just such a dog. I said, I want to go to Whippet Crossbreed. I said, quick, take me there. And he drove me to a housing estate in Clapham North, and that was Valerie.
So he took you to a housing estate, and did you know immediately that was the dog you wanted?
I did. Then Albert, who I still have, came from the Paul O'Grady Tea Time show, and they brought on a basket of homeless puppies, and kind of locked eyes with him. And Gigi, who's the latest edition, my husband saw her on a website, one of these, she's from Serbia, she's living in a graveyard or something.
And what do they teach you? Is it just that thing about the life will one day end? Is that what it is?
No. I've been here 19 years. No, it's different things. Like Fanny the Wonder Dog was a very extrovert dog. You remember her?
I do remember her very well.
And
yes.
I wasn't. I'm not particularly extrovert, so she kind of taught me in the early days when I was performing. She provided all the star quality. Valerie was a very restrained dog, very serene, and during the 90s when I might have been overindulging in various things, she taught me restraint. Albert taught me how to get old and not mind about that, and Gigi, we're not quite right out yet about how her gift is.
Fascinating talking about that, actually, but I think let's go back to our original choice, which was Chatty Taxi Drivers.
Just a few weeks ago, before you asked me to do this show, I was in a taxi on my way home, and I was being monosyllabic when they asked me about, you know, the government and current affairs, and isn't the traffic terrible? And then, as we entered the street in which I live, the taxi driver said, "Oh, I've been here before." And I've lived in the same road for 30 years. He said, "You know what I picked up in this street? That gay comic." And, I mean, I should have just kept quiet.
Yeah.
I said, "Oh, that'll be me." "Oh, you?" And he stopped the car, turned round, glared at me. He said, "Oh, you've got all fat in the face." "And your hair's gone grey." "That'll be £56. I was furious. Really upset me, depressed me. Why do they do it? What's wrong with them?
I don't know. It's that thing if they recognise somebody that they... I mean, a guy said to me in a taxi a few months ago, he said, you're... I said, yeah. He said, yeah. He said, I watched you on TV the other night, yeah. Not too cheesy. Well, that's how you review a pizza. I mean, but they just...
Well, what they say to me is, "Not seen you on the telly for a while."
Fat face.
Like there's no other activity that you could possibly do in life apart from be on television.
Yes.
You know, and you find yourself defending your career. I've been touring. I'm doing something on Radio 4 occasionally. But that's no good to them.
Well, I mean, you've shown us your gift for voices there. Have you ever sort of...
Singular would do.
Yeah. Is there not a voice you could do that would throw them off the scent so they didn't recognise you?
What should I do?
Well, that one, for example.
No. It isn't me.
The heating doesn't come on until 6 o'clock. On that note, then, they're definitely going into room 101. In they go. That was your final choice of going to room 101, Julian, so you'll never see those things again. They're definitely gone. Is there anything in your life that you couldn't really do without?
Well, I've chosen this because it's a recent thing. Apples.
Apples?
Yes, if you eat an apple every day, the health benefits are enormous. It's something like a 30% reduction in heart disease. And I thought, well, I'll try this. And I really can't get through the day. Sometimes I get out of bed in the night and I haven't had my apple. And
there's a particular type of apple that you like, like Pink Lady, or have you ever had a Golden Russet?
Yes, they're quite nutty in flavour.
Yeah.
I like them all. I like Pink Lady. I don't like those bright green, acid green ones.
No.
They're a little bit tart.
Yes.
I like.
Yeah.
But yes, they are eating apple.
Well, Julian, thank you so much for sharing your choices, and thank you for that health advice at the end. Ladies and gentlemen, Julian Clary!
Room 101 was written and presented by Paul Merton, with additional material by John Owen and Suki Webster. It was produced by Richard Wilson. It's a Hatchet production for BBC Radio 4.
Controversy surrounding this year's Eurovision Song Contest, with many people threatening